Hidden desires. Sophia had always been the perfect wife. Organized, dependable, loving. Her marriage to Mark had been strong for over 12 years, built on mutual respect and trust. Their life was stable, their routines predictable. Saturday brunches at the cafe down the street. Evening walks with their golden retriever, quiet Sunday mornings with coffee and a newspaper. From the outside, they were the picture of a happy couple. But inside, Sophia felt something missing. A void she couldn't quite explain. It wasn't that she didn't love Mark. He was a good man, steady and kind, always making sure she was taken care of. But as the years passed, the excitement, the passion, had faded into a dull hum of familiarity. Their kisses were pecks on the cheek, their conversations about errands and schedules rather than dreams and desires. She longed for something more, though she never spoke of it, not even to herself. And then there was Ethan. Ethan had been her first love, the boy who had made her heart race when she was 20. They had been young, reckless, and madly in love, but life had pulled them apart. She hadn't seen him in over a decade, until one fateful evening when she walked into a charity gala with Mark by her side, and there he was, standing across the room, holding a glass of whiskey and looking at her, as though time had never passed. A single glance was all it took. Their first conversation was innocent enough. They caught up, exchanged pleasantries, laughed about old memories. Mark, unaware of the electricity between them, had even shaken Ethan's hand and spoken about business matters. But when Ethan looked at her, there was something unspoken between them, something that ignited a fire deep within her that had long been dormant. After that night, Sophia found herself thinking about him constantly. The way he had leaned in slightly when she spoke. The way his voice still sent a shiver down her spine. The way he had hesitated before saying goodbye, as if he, too, felt the pull of the past. It started with an email, then another, then coffee, then dinners. Always innocent, always with the excuse of catching up. But she knew better. She knew where it was leading. She knew the way her heart raced before she saw him, the way she spent more time choosing an outfit, the way she laughed more with him than she had in years. Then, one evening, the inevitable happened. A storm raged outside, rain pounding against the windows of the quiet, dimly lit bar where they had met. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers, sending a jolt through her body. She could have pulled away. She should have. But instead, she let her fingers entwine with his. "Tell me to leave," Ethan whispered, his voice rough with restraint. She didn't. Moments later, they were in his hotel room, tangled in sheets, lost in the fever of rediscovered passion. Every touch, every kiss was electric, filled with years of longing. For the first time in forever, she felt truly alive. But reality always catches up. The affair continued in secret. Stolen weekends when Mark was away on business trips. Lies about meeting friends. Careful, calculated messages sent late at night. Each time she told herself she would end it. Each time, she found herself back in Ethan's arms. And then, one day, Mark found out. It wasn't dramatic. No screaming, no accusations. Just a quiet moment when he looked at her with tired, knowing eyes and said, "I know, Sophia." Her breath caught in her throat. "Mark, how long?" His voice was calm, but she could hear the pain beneath it. Tears welled in her eyes. "A few months." He nodded, staring down at his hands, as if absorbing the weight of her betrayal. "Do you love him?" The question hit her like a punch to the chest. Did she? Or was it just the thrill, the escape, the version of herself she became when she was with Ethan? "I don't know," she whispered. Mark sighed, rubbing his temples. "I don't want to be second choice, Sophia. I deserve more than that." She wanted to take it back, to erase everything, to be the perfect wife again. But the truth was, she wasn't the same woman anymore. The affair had changed her, opened her eyes to desires she had buried for years. And so, the marriage ended, not in a fiery explosion, but in quiet heartbreak. Ethan had once been her first love. Now, he was the reason she had lost everything. She met him one last time, in the same bar where it had all begun. Was it worth it? He asked, watching her with that same intensity that had once made her weak. She didn't know how to answer. Love, passion, regret, they all blurred together. Maybe she had been chasing a ghost. Maybe she had mistaken nostalgia for love. I don't know, she admitted. Ethan reached for her hand, but this time, she pulled away. She had already lost too much. And with that, she walked away, leaving behind the past, and the man who had been both her greatest love and her greatest mistake. Story number 2, the unspoken betrayal. Emma had always believed in love, in commitment, in the sacred vows exchanged on her wedding day. For 9 years, she and Daniel built a life together, bought a house, traveled the world, and dreamed of starting a family. Their love had been real, but somewhere along the way, the passion faded into routine. Daniel, once the man who would write her poetry and surprise her with spontaneous getaways, now spent more time at work than with her. The warmth in his eyes had been replaced by the cold glow of his laptop screen. Conversations became short, touches grew rare, and the silence between them stretched longer with each passing night. Then came Liam. He was everything Daniel no longer was: attentive, charismatic, spontaneous. Emma met him at a friend's dinner party, and from the moment their eyes met, she felt a jolt of something she hadn't felt in years. Attraction, excitement, danger. He was tall, confident, with a smile that made her forget the loneliness that had settled deep within her bones. Unlike Daniel, who had become predictable and distant, Liam was unpredictable, magnetic, and full of life. At first, it was nothing. Innocent conversations, text messages about books and movies, a casual coffee meeting that lasted 3 hours. Then, one evening, as they walked along the dimly lit streets of the city after a late-night gathering, Liam stopped, looked in her eyes, and whispered, "Do you ever wish for something more?" Emma hesitated. She should have said no. She should have walked away. But instead, she let her heart take control. She let her emotions speak louder than reason. And before she knew it, she leaned in, and for the first time in years, she felt truly desired. That night, she went home to Daniel with the taste of another man still lingering on her lips. What started as a single stolen kiss soon became a tangled web of secrets. Emma told herself it was harmless, just an escape, a fantasy she was indulging in before returning to her normal life. But fantasies have a way of turning into reality, and reality has consequences. She began lying about late work meetings, about weekend outings with friends. Every message from Liam sent her heart racing. Every moment with him felt like a drug she couldn't quit. They would steal moments in hidden corners, share whispered conversations that held more emotion than entire years of her marriage, and disappear into hotel rooms where reality ceased to exist. But guilt was a persistent shadow. Daniel, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath their roof, continued to love her in his quiet, distant way. He didn't question her absences, didn't notice the way she no longer reached for him at night. And somehow, that made it worse. He trusted her. One evening, as she sat across from Liam in a candlelit restaurant, her phone vibrated. It was Daniel. Daniel asterisk, "I miss you. Let's have dinner together tonight." Emma stared at the screen, a lump forming in her throat. Liam noticed the change in her expression. "What is it?" he asked, placing his hand gently over hers. She hesitated. "It's my husband." A flicker of something, jealousy, disappointment, crossed Liam's face. "And what are you going to do?" She didn't answer. Instead, she swallowed hard, turned off her phone, and reached for her wine glass. That night, when she returned home, Daniel was waiting. He had set the table, lit candles, prepared her favorite meal. "I just wanted to remind you how much I love you," he said softly, his eyes filled with something raw, something desperate. Emma felt the weight of her betrayal crush her. She wanted to confess, to fall into his arms and beg for forgiveness. But she didn't. Instead, she smiled, sat down, and pretended. Pretended that she wasn't breaking him. Pretended that she wasn't breaking herself. Affairs don't stay hidden forever. One afternoon, as she and Liam lay entangled in his apartment, lost in the comfort of each other's presence, her phone rang. Daniel's name flashed on the screen. She silenced it. But then came another call, and another, and then a message, "Come home." We need to talk. Fear gripped her. She rushed home, her heart pounding with every step. When she walked through the door, she found Daniel standing in the dimly lit living room, holding her phone in his hands. The unread messages from Liam were glaringly visible. "I know," he said, his voice eerily calm. Emma felt the room spin. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Her mind raced, searching for excuses, explanations, anything that could undo what had already been done. "I read the messages," he continued. "How long?" Tears welled in her eyes. "Daniel, I never wanted to hurt you." He let out a bitter laugh. "But you did." Silence filled the space between them, heavy and suffocating. She wanted to explain, to tell him that she still loved him, that she had been lost, searching for something she hadn't even known she needed, that she hadn't planned for this to happen. But nothing she said would change the truth. "I can't do this," Daniel whispered, his voice breaking. "I deserve better." The reality of it hit her like a tidal wave. She had destroyed the one thing she never thought she'd lose. And just like that, her marriage was over. Some betrayals are spoken. Others remain silent, carried in the hearts of those who can never take them back. Emma never saw Liam again. And as she lay alone in the bed she once shared with Daniel, she realized that the worst part of betrayal isn't being caught. It's knowing you betrayed yourself. Story number 3. Secret affair. Marina had always considered herself a devoted wife. In 12 years of marriage with Artem, they had their ups and downs, but she never allowed herself to even think about another man. They met at university, married young, and had 2 children. Marina worked as a dentist, while Artem was an IT specialist. Their life seemed stable and predictable. But then he appeared. Maxim was Marina's new colleague, tall, athletic, with a lively, slightly defiant gaze. Unlike Artem, who had worn the same jeans and sweaters for years, Maxim always looked stylish. He knew how to give compliments, how to make a woman feel special. At first, Marina dismissed it. She was married, she had a family. But the more they talked, the harder it became to ignore the tension between them. One evening after work, they stayed late in the office, sorting through paperwork. Maxim stood too close, and Marina caught his scent, a mix of cologne and something warm, masculine. "You're beautiful," he suddenly said, looking straight into her eyes. Marina froze. Her heart pounded. She wanted to say this was wrong, but instead, she felt his hand lightly brush hers. That evening, she went home feeling conflicted. Hugging Artem, she felt guilt but also a strange excitement. The next few weeks were a torment of self-control. She and Maxim interacted as usual, but their glances lingered longer, and their accidental touches became more intentional. The turning point came at a company party. There was plenty of wine, laughter, and conversation. As the night drew to a close, Maxim offered to drive her home. "I'll call a taxi," Marina said. "Let me drive you. It's on my way." She hesitated but agreed. When the car stopped outside her house, silence filled the space. Maxim looked at her and quietly said, "If you get out now, tomorrow everything stays the same." She was supposed to open the door and leave. She knew that, but instead, her fingers tightened around his hand. "And if I don't?" she whispered. Maxim said nothing. He just pulled her close and kissed her. That night, Marina cheated on her husband for the first time. After that night, Marina couldn't sleep. She lay in bed beside Artem, listening to his steady breathing, replaying the events of the evening in her mind. She knew it was a mistake, but even that realization couldn't erase the memory of how Maxim had kissed her, how his hands had moved over her body. It was new, forbidden, thrilling. The next morning, she acted as if nothing had happened. She made breakfast, sent the kids to school, kissed Artem on the cheek as he left for work. But inside, she was torn apart by contradictions. At work, everything was different. Maxim acted as if nothing had happened. He smiled at her, but made no move to get closer. Marina should have felt relieved. But instead, she was frustrated. A week passed. Marina tried to live as before. But one evening, while washing dishes, she received a message. Maxim asterisk, "I can't forget you." Marina stared at the screen for a long time. Then, slowly, she typed a response. Marina asterisk, me neither. That evening, she lied to her husband, saying she had to stay late at work. They met at a hotel. And so, the double life began. The affair lasted nearly 6 months. They met in hotels, took trips outside the city under the pretense of work events, found moments in the office to steal a touch. Each time, she told herself it was the last. Each time it happened again. But secrets never last forever. One evening, Artem came home earlier than usual. Marina was in the shower when he walked into the bathroom and, out of habit, picked up her phone. She didn't even notice. Marina, his voice was cold. She froze. Slowly, she turned to him. Artem was holding her phone, and on the screen was an open message. Maxim asterisk. I want to feel you next to me again. Silence filled the air. Marina didn't know what to say. She saw the change in Artem's face. First confusion, then realization, then pain. It's not what you think. She began but stopped. It was pointless. He already knew. Artem silently threw the phone onto the table and walked out of the apartment. Marina sank to the floor, holding her head in her hands. Now everything had changed. There was no more pretending. Days passed. Artem didn't answer her calls. He took the children to his parents' house and disappeared. Marina felt her world crumbling beneath her feet. When Maxim found out, he offered to leave with her. We can start fresh, he insisted. But could she do that? Leave her children? Destroy everything completely? Marina stood at a crossroads. Stay alone, trying to fix her family, or leave with the man who had awakened her desires. In the end, she realized she couldn't abandon her children. She broke things off with Maxim, refused his offers, and tried to put her life back together. Artem could never forgive her. The divorce was painful, and the children struggled to understand what had happened. Life didn't go back to the way it was, but Marina learned that choices always have consequences. Maxim disappeared from her life, leaving only memories of the passion that had destroyed everything. Marina was left alone. But maybe this was her chance to start over, not with illusions, but with a clean slate. Now, she had to rebuild her relationship with her children, find a new job, and get used to being alone. But one thing she knew for sure, the past couldn't be undone, and now she had to keep moving forward, no matter how difficult the road ahead might be.